we are playing for keeps. It is a battle over keeping our country, which means to continue to build our country, or tearing our country down completely. And once they get past the statues, they're not going to be happy. They're going to go for more institutions. They're going to go for you. President Trump talked about this in his first rally since the coronavirus lockdown. And he talked about his strategy. A lot of us, including on this show, we've talked about why is President Trump allowing this to happen? Why won't he roll the tanks into Chaz, CHOP, Somalia, Soviet Union, whatever you want to call it? Why won't he do it? One thought has been that perhaps he wants people to see how bad things get. Trump knows a lot about stagecraft and about the media. Maybe he wants people to see the cities burning and then realize that we need law and order and we have to vote for him. I think that's a tough strategy, but actually, at his rally over the weekend, Trump admitted that this is exactly what he's doing.
All of these places I talk about are Democrat. You know that, every one of them. Every one of them. And I have an offer out. I said, anytime you want, we'll come in, we'll straighten it out in 1 hour or less. Now, I may be wrong, but it's probably better for us to just watch that disaster. I flew in with some of our great congressmen who we're going to introduce in a second, and I said to them, Congressman, what do you think? I can straighten it out fast. Should we just go in? No, sir. Let it simmer for a little while. Let people see what radical left Democrats will do to our country.
He makes a great point here and confirms what a lot of us thought was happening. And even more than that, he gives you a peek into his thinking. If President Trump were secretly letting the cities burn, just so that we could see how bad it was going to get, I think a lot of people would accuse him of cynicism, saying, you're willing to let cities go up in flames just to make a political point. But the very fact that Trump is telling you what he's doing takes away that cynicism, right? He's admitting it to you. There's no guile here. And that's the point of these rallies, is to take you behind the scenes, create this personal connection. And I think he does that pretty successfully. The one trouble with this strategy, though, is that we no longer live in a country that recognizes federalism very clearly. We don't really understand. If you asked 100 people on the street, probably very few of them would recognize that we have local government, state government, federal government, and actually the local government makes most of the decisions and administers most of the laws and regulations, and the state government a little bit more too. And the federal government has relatively few powers, narrowly defined powers. Most people wouldn't recognize that because it's become less and less true over time. So you look around at the burning cities, I think a lot of people look at Trump and say, well, you're the president, do something about it. Action is a good spur to enthusiasm. Action is very inspiring. And so Trump is playing a game here. That's why he had said, I admit I could be wrong about this, but I think it's better to let people see what happens. I think what needs to happen is a little bit of a combination of the two. I think it's good to watch Chaz and CHOP. It's hilarious. It's sort of like when AOC proposed the Green New Deal, which was so absurd, and Mitch McConnell immediately said, well, we got to vote on this ASAP. We got to get the Green New Deal on the docket, and we got to get everybody on the record. Do you support destroying 90% of American energy? Do you support spending $93 trillion? Get on the record, Senator. There is a little bit of that performance of seeing how bad it is. But we also need to see action. We have elected Trump in part for his energy. We had other candidates who Trump perhaps aptly described as low energy. Trump is high energy, so we want to see that energy in action. Alexander Hamilton, writing in The Federalist, said that we want an energetic executive, an energetic government. So we do have to see that eventually. When is that going to be? Perhaps we'll have to wait and see. Trump took us a little more behind the scenes throughout the rest of this rally. I thought it was overall an okay rally, but the mainstream media are knocking him for one thing and one thing in particular. The crowd sizes were underwhelming. Why was that? We will get to it. There is a conspiracy afoot, which the left is admitting, just like Black Lives Matter admits that it's Marxist, just like the UN admits that it supports Antifa. But there is a campaign problem too. So Trump talks about his strategy on the riots. Then he gets even more personal than that. He goes on this digression about how he was giving a speech at West Point and then he tried walking down the ramp, but the ramp was slippery, so he had to walk slowly. Most people are criticizing Trump for this. They think this was a waste of time at his rally. I think it's the key feature to his rally. Here is Trump talking about that all-important shuffle down the ramp.
And this was a steel ramp. You all saw it because everybody saw it. This was a steel ramp. It had no handrail. It was like an ice skating rink. And I said, General, I have a problem. And he didn't understand that at first. I said, there's no way. You understood? I just saluted almost 600 times. I just made a big speech. I sat for other speeches. I'm being baked. I'm being baked like a cake. I said, General, there's no way I can make it down that ramp without falling on my ass, General. I have no railing. True. It's true. So I said, is there like something else around? Sir, the ramp is ready to go. Grab me, sir. Grab me. I didn't really want to grab him. You know why? Because I said, that'll be a story too.
So he takes you through, I don't like it when the president uses vulgar language in public, but the story does seem to call for it, and I see what he's doing here. The media, for how long? For a week, basically, talked about how Trump was old and doddering by walking down this ramp. Meanwhile, their candidate is Joe Biden. Enough said. But they talk about the ramp for a week, so he wants to take you behind the scenes on all these little moments. At one point, the media accused him of maybe having Parkinson's disease. Trump jokes about this, goes on a several-minute-long rant, basically a stand-up comedy bit, about how when you're drinking water, it's a good idea not to spill it on your silk necktie.
You had on a very good red tie that's a sort of expensive. It's silk because they look better. They have a better sheen to them. And I don't want to get water on the tie. And I don't want to drink much. So I lifted up the water. I see we have a little glass of water. Where the hell did this water come from? Right? Where did it come from? And I look down on my tie, because I've done it. I've taken water, and it spills down into your tie. It doesn't look good for a long time. And frankly, the tie is never the same. So I put it up to my lip, and then I say, because I don't want it to, just in case. And they gave me another disease. They gave me another disease.
So he takes a sip of the water, then he throws the water to the side. President Trump sips the water, and then he throws it off the stage. The guy gets stagecraft so well. And you were watching, you say, why am I watching the President of the United States talking about how silk neckties have a better sheen and how you don't want to dribble water on it because they're kind of expensive? Meanwhile, this guy's a billionaire. It's very, very funny. It's very, very personal. And it makes you have a much tighter connection to the man speaking than you have to the mainstream media that are lying about him. And it makes you trust him more than you trust them. I actually think this kind of stuff, the tie bit, all of that, is some of the most important stuff in the speech. He probably could have cut it down a little bit in terms of the length of time, but it was really good stuff. Then he shows you why this personal stuff matters, because he pivots from a story that isn't completely trivial, like the ramp or the necktie. He pivots into a personal story about negotiating over the price of an aircraft. And now all of a sudden, very subtly, before anybody knew it happened, Trump blends the personal element and the political element, and he shows you his political philosophy, which more or less boils down to make good deals.
I said, cancel the contract. I want to cancel. I said, General, can you cancel the contract? He said, yes, sir. I'm very proud of it. Oh, good. Cancel it. Okay, sir. By the way, to cancel it, do you have to pay anything? Yes, sir. We have a cancellation fee, sir. How much is it, General? $250 million, sir. I said, what? Sir, we made a good deal. $250 million to cancel. You mean if we don't buy the plane, we have to hand them $250 million? That's not good, right? Look at these two guys. They're looking. By the way, that's like a good story compared to some I could tell you, like with aircraft carriers. So I say, General, don't cancel. Don't cancel. Just tell him I don't want the planes. Don't put anything in writing. Don't put it in writing, General. Why, sir? Because I don't want to pay $250.
You don't want to pay $250. The speech was largely like this. It was much funnier than Dave Chappelle's recent stand-up special on Netflix, right? This is Trump's superpower, and he does it very well. Why does this matter? Well, because most politicians, they don't care about $250 million. $250 million is a drop in the bucket of our federal budget. It's a rounding error, so nobody worries about that. Trump is showing you he does worry about that the President of the United States, leader of the free world, is personally negotiating over the cost of airplanes. Because most politicians don't care about this stuff, but most Americans do budget. They think about things. Even if you go buy a T-shirt or you go buy a box of cereal or something, you're looking at the numbers. You say, okay, well, I don't want to spend $5. I'd rather spend $4. I don't want to spend $15. I'd rather spend $14. And you're thinking about these things. It's very relatable. It shows you that this guy is different from everyone in Washington, and he's much more like you. He then moves on to more ideological questions. And this question, I think, shows a major debate that's going on the right now between the old kind of more libertarian consensus and the new more conservative traditional idea that's emerging. And this is on the question of flag burning. As President Trump echoed a sentiment he's mentioned before, sentiment that I have supported on this show, which is we ought to have laws or a constitutional amendment, I suppose, in this country against burning the American flag.
And you know, we ought to do something, Mr. Senators. We have two great senators. We ought to come up with legislation that if you burn the American flag, you go to jail for 1 year. 1 year.
This is a great idea. I know that some conservatives are going to shrink back instinctively. Like if you're at a doctor's office and he hits the hammer on your knee and the knee goes up, you're going to shrink back at that because we support free speech. So you can't be for a flag burning, anti-flag burning amendment, right? Wrong. Not quite. What's the issue here? The issue is the debate. Are conservatives going to get serious, or are we going to let the left run roughshod over the country? For a long time in this country, for most of our nation's history, we've had laws against burning the flag. For a lot longer than we haven't had laws against burning the flag. This was just part of our nation. Then this was challenged in recent decades, and it was found to be unconstitutional to have a law against burning the American flag. And actually, Antonin Scalia, the great originalist justice, was one of the people who opposed, who found that it was unconstitutional to have an amendment or a law against burning the American flag. The conservatives tended to support the flag burning laws. Liberals opposed the flag burning laws. Scalia sided with the liberals on constitutional grounds because he said that burning the American flag is clearly an expressive action. It clearly is about political speech, and so those laws are unconstitutional. Now, one solution to this would be pass a constitutional amendment saying you can't desecrate the American flag. Because in some cases, when you want to dispose of an old American flag, a tattered American flag, you do burn it. We're not worried about the burning. It's the desecration that we don't like. I think this is a very good idea. There's a reason why we, for most of our country's history, had laws against burning the American flag, and we all thought that they were perfectly constitutional. It's because it's incoherent to burn the American flag and to do so in the name of the First Amendment, because the American flag is the symbol of the whole country, the country which includes in it the First Amendment. If you burn the American flag, you are burning symbolically the First Amendment, and so it's an act that doesn't make any sense. Moreover, I think of it in the way that G.K. Chesterton talked about how there is a thought that stops thought, and that is the only thought that ought to be stopped. There is free expression that stops free expression. And that is the only free expression that ought to be stopped by the lights of the First Amendment. That would be something like burning a flag. Another reason is that nations need to have things that hold them together. And when in the early days of America, we shared largely a common actual ancestry in the Anglo-American tradition. We shared a language, we shared political institutions, we shared a religion, we shared all of these things. And increasingly over time, we don't share those things anymore. We don't share any of those things, really. You need to have something that holds you together. And if you can't even agree on the symbol of the whole country, then there's nothing left. Another reason this is a great idea and why it's actually conservative to have an amendment, a constitutional amendment against burning the American flag, is that the conservative worldview needs to have not just form, but substance. It needs to have not just procedure, but actual stuff. So, for instance, we support free expression. We support the First Amendment. But we also need to support specific things to express. It can't just be, you're free to make any decision you want. Well, what decision are you going to make? It's like the pro-choice people. They say, we're pro-choice. Okay, you're choosing to do what? Really what they mean is they're pro-abortion. We need to have stuff to our conservatism. For the last 50, 60 years, conservatism has more or less just boiled down to procedure. We're going to oppose the certain procedures that are destroying America. But if you use the right procedure to tear down statues, that's a good thing. Or even on the question of immigration, as we let in more and more and more immigrants in the country and there's less and less and less assimilation, we say, okay, well, of course, we would never oppose that left-wing policy, but you got to do it legally. You got to follow the right procedure, but we're not going to oppose you on the substance. We need to have some substance to it. We've seen the effects. Or look at originalism. We've said we need to have these originalist judges. They don't need to have any conservative content, but they need to follow this procedure of interpretive principle. Well, guess what? We've lost virtually every important case over the last 20, 30 years, 40 years, more than that. The procedure is not enough. We need to have substance. We need to stand for something. I think that would be a good future for the conservative movement. Frankly, I think it's the only future if we want to stop before all the statues and all of our country is tumbled down. Thank you for tuning into the Daily Wire, one of the fastest growing conservative media outlets in the country. If you enjoyed this video, and really, even if you didn't, please be sure to give it a like and subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you don't miss out on any of our content.